Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my updated draft. The game has been out for about a week now, so I'll update my thinking around some of the key players, the prices, the structure, and much more. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, before we jump into looking at my current updated draft, I have an absolutely massive announcement that I'm so excited to finally make. For the 2024-25 season, I'm starting an in-studio FPL podcast. I'll flash a picture on your screen right now called FPL Therapy. This has been like over a year in the making. A lot goes into getting this sorted, but I am so happy to be able to finally announce it. So I would love your support. I will link down below the YouTube channel. There'll also maybe be links to the Spotify and the Apple. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to follow on Spotify or Apple or whatever you listen on. You can obviously find me on social media at FPL Therapy as well. There'll be loads of links down below in the comments. And if I can just have 45 seconds of your time, here is the trailer to FPL Therapy where you can see the set and get a bit of a vibe for what it's going to be about. Welcome to FPL Therapy, a new weekly studio-based podcast hosted by me, FPL Raptor, where I'll guide you through the FPL season and hopefully make you laugh along the way because everybody needs a little bit of FPL therapy. Every week I'll be joined by a different guest. Some you may recognize from the FPL community, some from wider YouTube, some from the music scene, and potentially even some professional footballers too. By inviting a new guest on every week, we'll continue to get unique insights and different perspectives in the hope to not only entertain you, but also to win you your mini leagues as well. If you enjoy listening to FPL chat with a light-hearted vibe, this is going to be the podcast for you. You can find FPL Therapy on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as audio-based streaming platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts too. My advice would be to subscribe on YouTube though, because I think the visuals are pretty cool. Hopefully you join me for the ride, and if you do, let me know down below in the comments, who would you like to see as a guest on FPL Therapy? So guys, there it is. That is the trailer for FPL Therapy, and I would love your support. As I said, if you've enjoyed any of my videos across the years, or if you enjoy more long-form content, or maybe you go for like dog walks, or you commute to work, and you just like something to listen to, this will be the podcast for you, and I'd massively appreciate if you go and follow on whatever platform you would probably end up listening, and also subscribe on YouTube, of course. So, with that little promotion out the way, and thank you very much for your support, this is my current updated draft as of Friday the 26th of July, whenever you are watching this, because it will constantly change. And there are things that I love about this draft, there are things that I absolutely hate about this draft, and I'll try to be honest throughout if I'm like, that's a bit of an issue with this draft, and there are various ones. But this is an obvious point. You can't have everything. So as soon as you remove Watkins, you've got more money, but then you don't have Watkins. As soon as you have an expensive midfield, well, then you've probably got one cheap forward. And as soon as you have a cheap defence, well, it's not great for consistency, but then you can have all the attackers you want. So it really is where you want to sacrifice. You can't have everything. And once again, massive props to official FPL for the incredible pricing. This is comfortably the best pricing we've had in years, because I've not been happy with a single draft, really, but I do really like this one at the moment. So, still in a 3-5-2. Most of my drafts have actually been 3-5-2s, but I genuinely do think 3-4-3 is also very strong, and I have used the budget in most of my drafts. There was one I really liked with 0.5, but I very quickly spent that money. So, with the goalkeepers, at the moment, I'm very keen on a Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. And the reason for that is they were the 4th best defence or 5th best defence, depending where you look, for expected goals conceded last season. So they were, by all accounts, after Arsenal, City and Liverpool, who are actually my 3 defenders, Nottingham Forest were 4th. So they were a very good defence. And also on top of that, I would argue across the first 10 fixtures, they may well have the best opening set. So with a Nottingham Forest goalkeeper, you've got a great defence, but also great fixtures, but also keepers that do make saves as well, or at least Nottingham Forest concede shots. They're not a team like Arsenal or City, where Raya and Ederson in the past just don't make any saves because they don't concede shots. So I like the idea of a Forest keeper. The issue we've got is we don't actually know who's number 1. Lots of people are asking about Turner. Turner will not be number 1. He's 3rd choice. But as to whether it's Miguel, their new signing, or Sells, we don't actually know. I would imagine it's Miguel because they've just signed him. He's apparently 6'8" and very good at collecting from set pieces, and they struggled with set pieces last season. So it would surprise me if they bring in a keeper to help them with set pieces and then don't start that keeper. But Sells, obviously, I think the other issue is Sells was really bad last season. If you look at the data, I'll be honest, I didn't watch a lot of Forest games, but his post-shot XG prevented, which basically tells you how good the goalkeeper was pretty bad. He made a few mistakes as well. And so I would imagine that if they've just signed a new goalkeeper, Sells wasn't great last year, that Miguel might be first choice. But obviously, if we have too much doubt surrounding it, maybe it's too much of a risk. I also like the Crystal Palace goalkeepers, but we've got the same issue. Is it Henderson? Is it Johnston? If I'm unsure about all of that, there's two options. I think I'd just go for someone like Flecken instead, who looks very secure as first choice. And Brentford were very good. I think they were 5th or 6th for expected goals conceded last season. So that's an option. And the other option is going for someone like potentially Raya and then switching Saliba to someone else in my team. I don't love that because Raya doesn't make many saves, but I suppose Saliba doesn't score many goals. So the option is there as well. But for now, I really like the idea of a Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. This defence is going to spark controversy. Now, I would love to know down below in the comments, what do you think? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Or do you understand it at least a bit? And maybe wait until you see my attack, because people will say, just spend the money in the attack. And I actually don't think my attack has been compromised too much by having a defence of Saliba, Gvardiol, and Trent. And something that I've tried to do a lot with this draft is allow myself the ability to be able to roll up to 5 free transfers. This is the new rule that has been added if you are either new to FPL or you've just started watching content again. In the past, 2 free transfers was the maximum you could roll. And if you tried rolling after that, it would just stay at 2. Now we get 5. And the reason I think this is so critical is in those first 5 game weeks, if you can start with a really strong team where you don't need to make a few transfers, where you're not booking in transfers, you could get to game week 5 or 6 with increased team value, a really solid team, and 5 free transfers. You might then decide to wildcard at that point, but remember that the wildcard doesn't wipe the transfers. So you might wildcard in game week 5 or 6, and then not only have a really strong early wildcard team, but then have 5 transfers that you can then either just keep carrying and just using one each week, or if the wildcard doesn't work out, then you can obviously react to that. But I just think if you start with a super cheap defense, I mean, you can make the same argument in your case that then you've got all of the attackers you want, which is great. But I just think one of these, at least, maybe 2, maybe all 3, will have a really strong start. And then where do you go from there? And I always think, like, starting with someone like Trent and Gvardiol, if they do really disappoint, well, then downgrade them and you can use the money in your attack. But I just think this is a really solid foundation. And you could obviously foresee not having to touch any of those 3 defenders for the opening 12, 15 game weeks if there are no injuries and if you don't need to spend the money in the attack. Regarding kind of which of them are least likely to be in my team and which are most likely, I would say that Trent is virtually nailed in my team. I think I've committed. And I know he wasn't in my first draft, but I have watched so many YouTube videos about Arne Slot, and it just looks like a match made in heaven. Trent is going to be able to play slightly further forward. He will be inverting. I'm not sure if I love that. I like it when he plays wide, but he's not inverting into defensive midfield, or at least that's not what Slot has done in the past. Trent will be inverting almost into like I'm going to call it like a defensive 8 role, where he's in that kind of wide channel of the midfield. So he'll still be central, but he'll be able to get forward. And I've said this a couple of times now, but the right back in Slot system last season was called, I think, Geertruida. He scored 8 goals and got 5 assists, 13 attacking returns. A defender that in the past didn't have too much attacking threat. And as I always say, I genuinely think Trent is probably the most gifted defender of all time with the ball at his feet. So I really like the idea of Trent. He obviously didn't play too many minutes at the Euros as well. So as long as he returns at a decent time to Liverpool, you'd imagine he's in line to start in game week 1. And I think he's going to be critical to Slot system. So I really like it. And also, Liverpool have just exceptionally strong opening fixtures. Ipswich, Brentford, United, Forest, Bournemouth. 3 of those being at home as well. I just like the idea of Trent. So Trent has been in most of my drafts, but so has Gvardiol. In fact, most of my drafts have had Trent and Gvardiol because I'm committing to probably only having one of Salah and Haaland. We'll discuss who that is in a second. So I can afford to squeeze both of them in. And I just think Gvardiol, the way he ended last season, it was incredible. And City's fixtures, yes, they've got Chelsea in the opening day, which isn't great away. Then they've got Arsenal in game week 5. But those 3 in the middle, Ipswich, West Ham, Brentford, they're strong. So I don't want to go without City altogether. And I'm struggling to fit in many other City players. And I like the idea of Gvardiol. So those 2 have been every draft. That Saliba spot, I'm really unsure because, again, in the name of trying to make sure I've got a team where I'm not booking in transfers, I'm going to want an Arsenal defender from game week 5 onwards, right? And I could just use one of my transfers, to bring in an Arsenal defender. But unless I start with someone at 6 million, such as Van Dijk or any other 6 million defender, Kieran Trippier if he stays, I'm going to have to make 2 transfers to free up the funds to then bring in an Arsenal defender, right? Because if I start with someone like Mikalenko, then I need 1.5 million to get to Saliba. So then I'm booking in 2 transfers. And then what happens if other stuff crops up? And it will, by the way. You'll never roll 5 free transfers, probably. There'll be injuries, rotation, players that you just really want to jump on that start the season strong. Well, you've already booked in 2 transfers to get an Arsenal defender. So I kind of just feel like it sets you up long term, because you will at some point, unless there's a drastic change in the way what they defend, want an Arsenal defender. So I've got Saliba in there, and I do come back to the idea that maybe Raya is the one. Raya and Mikalenko saves me a bit of money, or if you still want a Forest defender, Raya and Murillo or Ola Aina, something like that, that could work, because it saves you money, you still get the clean sheets, but I just think that's a really solid defence. And again, if I decide that I don't want that after 5 or 6 games, and Arsenal look really, really shocking at the back somehow, well then, great, it frees up some money for me in the attack. So I know it's not for everyone, and I'm not committing to this right now, but I would be surprised if I don't have Trent, and I would be very surprised. Well, I'd be surprised if I don't have one of Gvardiol or Trent, and I wouldn't be surprised if I have both of them, in all honesty. So yeah, that's the starting back 3. On the bench, I've got 1 4.5, just if I need him, and that is Konsa at the moment. The reason for Konsa is the exact same thing that I just said, and this is kind of the theme of the draft, building for the long term. After the first 2 games, which aren't great for Aston Villa, but I won't need to play him because I'm perfectly happy playing my other 3 defenders most weeks anyway, West Ham and Arsenal. After that, the fixtures are exceptionally strong for Villa. And if I do get injuries or issues to my defence, and I don't want to make a transfer, Konsa can sit in really well for me. And after those first 2 weeks, he can sit in for anyone. He's got Leicester, Everton, Wolves, I believe. And so he can just come in if I need him and I don't want to make a transfer if one of my players is injured. So I like him. I've got Barco still from Brighton. If you've missed out on the news, Estepinian will miss the start of the season due to his surgery. And it looks like Barco will fill in at left wing back or left back. So I like the idea of Barco. So I think it's a really solid defence. If there was one change that I would make, apart from maybe Raya instead of Saliba, it would just be Saliba to a 4.5 and to rotate that with Konsa. So imagine something like Saliba to Mikalenko and rotate with Konsa, or Saliba to Anderson, who rotates really well with Konsa, and just rotate that third defensive spot with 2 4.5s. Let me know what you think of the premium defence. Let's move on to the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and we've actually made 2 changes since my first draft video just over a week ago. So in terms of players that are still there, Salah is still there, which of course means Haaland isn't. And I think this is very tight. The reason for Salah is twofold. The opening set of fixtures, if you look across the sort of first 6 to 8, I think are slightly stronger for Salah. I do think you can captain Haaland in a lot of them, but I just think they're slightly stronger for Salah. Salah is a midfielder, so has to do less to get more points. He's £2.5 million cheaper. And I like the draft that I can build with Salah more as a result. That is it. It's not me necessarily saying that I think Salah is a much better asset than Haaland. In fact, Haaland is probably still a slightly better asset. But is he 2.5 million better? I'm slightly unsure. I have no issue going with Haaland. And in all honesty, I have no issue going with both. I think that both drafts can work. It just looks a little bit unbalanced. I mean, I'm losing pretty much all of the premium defenders. I'm then losing one of, if not both, Palmer and Salah. It just starts to get to a point where I'm like, wow, I'm sacrificing quite a lot here to get them both in. And I think you've just probably got to commit either way, in my opinion anyway. But listen, I might change that. There's a strong chance. Let's say that Salah and Haaland both smash it in pre-season. Haaland scores a hat-trick in the Community Shield. Yeah, I might end up changing. But for now, I just think the balance of the team is better with one of them. And for me, that's Salah at the moment. I'd love to know, have you got Salah or Haaland in your draft? Maybe both, maybe neither. You can build a very, very good draft with neither. I'd probably advise having at least one of them, though. The other player that is still in there is Palmer. This is getting increasingly difficult to keep him because the Nkunku hype train is coming now, right? Nkunku he looks at least like he's going to be absolutely ridiculous value. He's 6.5. His data in the Bundesliga, fantastic. His data last season when he played for Chelsea in the short amount that he did was absolutely fantastic. He's got a lot of goal threat. He's not someone that's just going to get you loads of assists. He's going to get you goals as well. And I just think that he's the sort of player that you can imagine could be like the Palmer of last season, where they make an absolute mockery of their price tag. And I think I kind of want a piece of that. But do I need a piece of that right now? And do I still think that that makes Palmer a bad option? No. But he is 4 million more. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to have Palmer in there as a result. But I like that. I like owning a player where others are forced like, oh, he's a little bit expensive. And that's the same with Haaland. If you're sat there with Haaland in your draft now, it's great because other people like me are forced to say he might be a bit too expensive. And people are thinking that about Palmer, and that is absolutely fair enough. He is very, very expensive, but he's just the main man for Chelsea. He will be on penalties because he didn't miss last season. It would be ridiculous to take them off of him. He's got goal threat. He's got assist threat. He takes some set pieces. He's just pivotal to absolutely everything Chelsea do. Of course, the unknown is them under new management. Was Palmer just exceptional under Pochettino? I don't think so because he's so talented, and we saw that in the Euros as well. But yeah, maybe there's a bit of doubt around that, and maybe Nkunku is safer to start with just due to the price. My concern would be what happens if Palmer smashes it. Right? Let's say he scores against City, scores against Wolves, and Nkunku's only plays 65 minutes in both because he's just easing him in. That's difficult then to get back from Nkunku to Palmer. If Palmer starts slowly and Nkunku is absolutely tearing it up, well, yeah, I've missed out on those initial points, but it's a very easy transfer down to Nkunku. So I like the idea of starting with Palmer. And then Eze has been in all of my drafts, but I do have my reservations, right? Elise's left. That is massive because I know Eze can perform without him, but that incredible Crystal Palace attack that we saw last season at the back end, they were all combining for goals, so that is a massive loss. Yes, they've replaced him, and they've got very exciting players that have come in like Kamada that could do the job that Elise has done in the past, but Elise is a very, very unique, gifted footballer, and you just don't know how this is going to affect their attack. The other issue is that Mateta is at the Olympics at the moment with France. If France make the finals, which of course is quite likely given how strong their team is, you never know, but if he does, I believe the final is played on the 9th of August, which is approximately a week before, I think 7 or 8 days before Crystal Palace's Game Week 1 fixture. Now, if you look at the gap or the break that the players that were at the Euros and Copa America have been given, they've been given 2 weeks. So I'm not saying that he definitely will be, but if he is, he misses Game Week 1 and maybe Game Week 2. Even if he's only given a week, is he going to be tired? Is he going to be able to play 90 minutes? Is he going to be able to perform at the highest level in those opening couple of fixtures? I don't know. And that's assuming Mateta starts every game. If Mateta now doesn't start every game, but it looks likely that he will start at least most of them, then maybe he won't be as tired and he can come straight back. But I would just be slightly worried there. So do not be surprised if in future drafts Eze leaves the team. But in terms of why he's in there, he's always got really good data. With Elise gone, he should definitely be on penalties now. He'll be on all set pieces. He was pretty much on all set pieces last season. And he's just got that ability to go absolutely massive. I mean, I brought him in Game Week 38 last season, any excuse to talk about this, and he got me 18 points. And we, of course, know what they did in the double Game Week last season as well. I think they're exciting under Glasner, and I really want to own a Crystal Palace attacker, but maybe it doesn't align for Game Week 1, which would be a shame, but like I could have Nkunku in that Eze spot for 0.5 less. I could have Gibbs-White or Bailey. There are some really nice 6.5 options. Or if I can find 0.5, Eze to Gordon would be a great move for me there. So, yeah, I'm a little bit unsure about Eze, but he does just about make it into this draft at the moment. The 2 new additions are Saka and Rodgers. I can't remember who I even had in these spots before. I think I had Gibbs-White and Gordon, maybe? Gibbs-White and Bruno were the other 2. Now I've got Saka and Rodgers. Of course, I could downgrade Saka and upgrade Rodgers. So people will look at this and say, this is why you don't have a premium defence, because look how bad you've got to have a £5 million start. That's fine if you think that. Listen, Saka to Gordon gives you 3 million, which allows you to do Rodgers up to an 8. Or Saka down to Gibbs-White will give you 3.5 million, and that will allow you to upgrade Rodgers all the way to an 8.5. So you can mess around with these 2 spots, and you can spread the funds a little bit more evenly. My maths was probably completely off there. I'm very tired. So, yeah, you can spread the money a little bit more if you want to, but I like the idea of having Saka in there, and it's for a couple of reasons. It's for consistency, but also the price point, because if I put Saka in there, I can then decide what I want to do. Does Saka start the season well? Yes or no? Well, I can remove him for Foden, who's not in here, if Foden does really well. If Foden and Saka both struggle, well, then I can go down to Bruno or Odegaard. If they're struggling, well, then, yeah, I can spread the funds a little bit. But it's the same situation as before, where if you start with the money more spread, it's more difficult to get up. It requires a couple of transfers. Whereas if you start with the money more concentrated, you can make one transfer and downgrade. And I know that's obviously one of the reasons for going with Haaland, which I don't have. But again, you can't have everyone. So why have I got Saka and not Foden? Because I think that's the big decision in this team. Let's say I do have Palmer. Well, I've got to have one of Saka or Foden. Or Son, by the way, who I keep on failing to mention, who could be brilliant. But why have I got Saka? It's just he's a known quantity under Arteta. He will play every game he's available. Arteta has already said he sees no reason why the likes of Raya, Saliba, and Saka won't return straight back into the team for game week 1. And he plays Saka regardless of whether he's injured, fit, fatigued. It does not matter. Saka plays. And I like that opening fixture against Wolves at home. And I want an Arsenal attacker in there because they were so good last season. My concern with Pep, and we've seen this in the past, is does Foden start the opening day? Even if he was back and starts the Community Shield, I'm just not convinced that he starts game week 1. And if he does he start game week 2? And I know Foden was very nailed last season, but Pep is confident enough in his team and his system that if Foden played a lot of minutes at the Euros, and I know Saka did as well, but Saka just plays all the time for Arsenal. He's too critical to the way that they set up. So I would have some doubts and reservations unless we get 100% confirmation, or at least looks very likely, as to whether Foden will be available. And honestly, on Son, I love him as an option, but it depends on so many moving factors. There are rumours going around at the moment that Spurs are looking to sign the likes of Chiesa, or they're looking to sign Ivan Toney, or they're looking to sign this player. And all of that will impact a lot of things. If they sign someone like Ivan Toney, by the way, and if this rumour's gone, then ignore it, but I'm not convinced Son would be on pens. I know, club captain, he had them before, but Toney is just that good. If they sign Chiesa, well, then Son might still play through the middle if they don't sign a number 9. But do we want Son through the middle or through that? There are just so many moving factors. And let's be honest, Spurs ended the season horrifically last year. I think they finished 6 points above Man United. Think about how bad Man United were to only finish 6 points above them. They weren't perfect last year. And so I do have my doubts around Son. But equally, if Sonny looks like he's going to be as the number 9, they don't sign another striker, and still on penalties, well, then he deserves to be in the discussion. Those opening 2 fixtures are really solid. Leicester away, that feels like that could be like a 5-3 sort of game where there's loads of goals. We've seen it in the past between Spurs and Leicester. So I'm not disregarding Son. I just think there are too many unknowns for me at the moment to put him in a draft. But if we get a little bit more certainty about which players are signing, where Son will play, and whether he'll be on penalties, then there is a very good chance that Son makes it into my team at some point. But for now, that spot is Saka. And then the final player in the midfield is Rodgers. This is the biggest issue with this draft, is that I have a starting £5 million midfielder, and I don't have a good player to rotate him with because my player on the bench is Konsa. So what I am saying here is I have to start Rodgers every single game, pretty much, right? Because if I wanted to rotate him, I've got Konsa on the bench. So there's a couple of things that I could do here before I actually discuss Rodgers, just in terms of to make this a little bit better. The first is have someone other than Konsa, like a defender other than Konsa, that has good fixtures in the week where Rodgers doesn't. So in game week 2, when Rodgers has Arsenal, have a defender that has a better fixture. That would make a lot of sense because then I could go to a 4-4-2. I don't love that though, because then I'm starting a £4.5 million defender on a regular basis instead of an attacker, which might not be the best idea. The other option I have is downgrading Saliba and upgrading Stewart. So something I could do is Saliba to Mikalenko and Stewart to Muniz. And if you look at Muniz's fixtures, in game week 2, he's got Ipswich, I believe, and then game week 3, Leicester. But so in game week 2, when Rodgers has Arsenal, I could just bring Muniz in. That is probably a better setup overall. I just wanted to show you this draft with a bit more of a premium defense. But yeah, Saliba down to a 4.5 and Stewart up makes a lot of sense because it then means I don't have to rely on Rodgers. And let's say Rodgers loses his place. Well, I probably don't want to start Muniz every single week in my attack, but I could do in the meantime whilst I think about what I want to do with that Rodgers spot. So those are the options. Or the final option is downgrade Saliba once again to 4.5 and just upgrade Rodgers to Bailey. Maybe makes a lot more sense. But then I am losing an Arsenal player and I'm losing an Arsenal defender. So I don't think that's an easy decision to make. So there we go. Those are the options. But as to why Rodgers is in there are lovely quotes coming out from Unai Emery about Rodgers and his impact. He looks like he might be playing almost like a second striker. Yes, pre-season has turned my head. Of course it has. And it does every season. And it should. Often, pre-season tells us quite a bit. But sometimes it lies to us as well. And this might be a bit of a trap. But he's got 3 goals in pre-season, but he's also looked very strong. And he's playing, like I said, almost like a second striker. As to how he'll link up with Watkins this season, we'll have to wait and see. But I like the idea of him to start the season because it facilitates so much else in the team. But I would be surprised if I don't do something to make it a little bit less risky. And I think that would be Saliba down and either Muniz in for Stewart or potentially just Rodgers to one of Gibbs, White or Bailey. or Nkunku, who are probably my three favourite £6.5 million midfielders. Let me know what you think about that midfield. Would you do one of those things to make Rodgers a little bit more risk-free? Let's now look at the two forwards. So guys, moving on to the two forwards, I should just say this team is rated at 95% according to Fantasy Football Hub, which is officially the highest team rating that I've had yet, which might mean I'm moving in the right directions, and is predicted to get 66.8 points in game week 1. If you were to build this team yourself in Fantasy Football Hub, and you're like, this isn't 95%, I had to switch out Miguel for Sells just for entering my team, because at the moment, because there's no evidence to say otherwise, they've still got Sells as the starting goalkeeper. So if you do want to get your team rated for free and see if you can beat my 95%, and I'd love to know if you can because I haven't beat 95% yet, there will be a link down below in the description. The first link, after all of my FPL therapy links, the first link will be to get your team rated for free. All you have to do is upload a screenshot. I'll show you on your screen now. Upload a screenshot and it will look at your team, give you an AI team rating, which I think is super useful for you, just to sense check yourself. And then the second link will be to sign up for 50% off at the moment during pre-season. It's £3.25 a month it works out at for the best tier. And it just makes a lot of sense for me because you get all of the stats you want. You can have this AI team feature. There are so many different things on that site for only a few quid a month. It will just really, really help you throughout your fantasy football season. So do check out those two links down below. But to finish with the forwards, Isak has been in every draft. I think Isak will be the highest owned player going into game week 1 because Callum Wilson looks like he's not going to be fit anyway, but Isak would be first choice regardless. He's definitely on penalties then, obviously, if Wilson's not there. But again, I still think he'll be first choice on pens. And he's got Southampton at home in game week 1. He's a genuine captaincy shout, Alexander Isak. So I just think I don't need to go through the reasons as to why I would pick him. The only concerns we've had in the past is his fitness and injury record. But towards the back end of last season, he was exceptionally fit and did not get injured. I mean, there was a game I was watching. I can't remember which one it was. They were like 4 or 5-1 up in this game. It was one of the games that he'd been smashing it. He'd already got a goal or two. And he sprinted like 40 yards to close down the goalkeeper and press. And it's like Alexander Isak being able to sprint half the length of the pitch in the 90th minute after already winning the game comfortably. He's looking very strong and fit. And I think that's a good thing because it means that he should play a lot of minutes. So I think Isak just makes so much sense for so many reasons. And then the latest addition is Chris Wood. And people will not like this. And I don't worry, I get it. It doesn't need to be Chris Wood. It could be a number of strikers at that price. And I do think there are quite a few good ones. So I think there are 4 at the moment that stand out to me. And that is Muniz and Wood at 6 million. And then at 5.5, João Pedro and Armstrong. The reason João Pedro isn't in here at the moment, because he could arguably be the standout option, is just because he didn't go on tour with Brighton. I think it was to Japan, but he didn't go on their pre-season tour because he's picked up a minor injury, supposedly. It doesn't sound like it's enough to keep him out long term, but I can't put in a player that we know is injured at the moment because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think Chris Wood is fantastic. He scored 14 goals in the Prem last season. Like, that went a little bit under the radar. Brilliant. He should be on penalties if Gibbs White's not on the pitch, but Gibbs White is usually on the pitch like for 9% of the time. He could take a pen. I don't think he'll be on penalties ahead of Gibbs White, but if he's on 1 goal, 2 goals, or if he's in a rut and hasn't scored recently, or if Gibbs White just decides to, or if Wood wins it, I wouldn't be surprised to see Wood take the odd penalty. But Gibbs White, as far as we know, is first choice penalty taker. And he scored 2 goals in pre-season as well. And I'm not putting all of this on pre-season, but he seems to have picked up where he left off at the end of last season. Now, the concern with Wood, I don't think is the fixtures. I don't think it's his data because it's really strong. I don't think it's that he's a good goal scorer because he is. It's whether Awoniyi will start ahead of him. And he has now joined them on tour. There were rumours that he might be leaving, but that doesn't look likely now. So let's see what happens during pre-season. If his minutes are a doubt, I, of course, won't go for him. But I quite like the idea of starting the season with him. And then you could switch to the likes of João Pedro or Armstrong if it doesn't work out. I could say you go for Muniz instead, but I think there is a strong chance that I go for Muniz in that Stewart spot and then downgrade Saliba so that I can rotate Muniz into the starting 11. So yeah, that's the forward line. I think it is strong. 2 home fixtures as well. But if I was to now assess this draft overall, right? So you've seen all of the players. What is the issue with this draft? Well, the first issue is there are no City attackers. And that is an issue because City score a hell of a lot of goals. So no Foden, no Haaland. How can I fix that? Well, Saka to Foden fixes that, but then I don't have an Arsenal attacker, so it doesn't really fix it. The other option is downgrading the defence a hell of a lot and going for upgrading maybe Eze to Foden if I downgrade the defence all the way, potentially. The other option is I try and squeeze Alvarez in if I think he'll get significant minutes, but I don't necessarily think so. So at the moment, it might be that I go without City attack, which doesn't feel great. Outside of that, the other issue is I'm starting with two very cheap attackers in Rodgers and Wood, 6 and 5, and I don't really have the bench cover to rotate them out at the moment. Outside of that, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think... Oh, Ollie Watkins. I knew there was one more thing that's an issue with this draft. The absence of Ollie Watkins, who was the top scoring forward in FPL last season, comfortably outscoring the rest, really. That is a huge omission when I've just said that they have really good fixtures from Game Week 3 onwards. So yeah, I think two cheap attackers being in the start 11 isn't great. No Ollie Watkins isn't great. And then no Foden or Haaland, again, is a bit of an issue. But once you put those players in, like let's say I put Watkins in for Wood, well then I would look at it and say my defence is a bit weak. If I put Foden in for Saka, I'd say I've got no Arsenal attacker. So you have to choose where you pick your battles, and I've picked my battles here at the moment. So I think this is a very well-rounded draft in general. I just think that maybe I do need to just take a little bit of money out of that defence to either just give me more rotations for Rodgers and Wood, or to just upgrade one of Rodgers and Wood to just make them a slightly more solid, consistent option with a known entity such as, I don't know, a Gibbs White, a Bailey, something like that. So let me know down below what you think of this team, and let me know how much it differs from your own current team as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my current updated draft as of Friday the 26th of July. So this will change, I'm sure, throughout, but I'm enjoying tinkering and I'm really enjoying FPL this season. And if you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this point and you're thinking, I'm not yet subscribed, please do subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And as I said, please check out FPL Therapy. All the links will be down below in the description. I would really appreciate the support because I'm so excited for this project. And it's only possible due to the support you've shown me already. So if you can extend that to FPL Therapy as well, I'd really appreciate it. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.